Welcome back, everyone. As you probably guessed from the intro and the thumbnail, we are going over these two lights here from Surefire. They're the newest that I'm aware of anyway that they have produced. And what are they? Well, essentially they are the Surefire Scout series. They're also from their Pro series, and then they're also from their Turbo series. So that means kind of a few things. So the Scout is basically a series of weapon lights that have been designed by Surefire to be run on long guns, either PCCs, rifles, etc., things like that. And there have been a number of different iterations. We have reviews, I believe, as of the posting of this video, of all of the different Scout lights out there. So if you guys are interested in that, check them out. But the Pro series, and specifically, has these mounts on there. So the Pro has the integrated mount on there. It comes with both the 1913 mount, like you guys see here on this light, as well as the M-Lock mount, which you guys see here on this light. And they can be adjusted in terms of cant with the handguard or rail that you're using, basically by loosening this screw up front and then basically tightening it back down when it's in the position that you want it to be in. You can also, again, remove that screw and then put in the M-Lock or 1913 mount, whichever one you want. Pros of that basically is that you don't have to pay for an additional mount like you would if you were trying to use an M-Lock mount or key mount, whatever the case may be, with the non-Pro Scouts. Con of that is that it makes it a little bit more limited in terms of where you can mount it on your rail with the factory mount. Now there is a couple company, or I should say, a couple companies making aftermarket mounts for it. So it is available, but not like it is for all of the different earlier series or non-Pro Scouts, if you will. The next part of the naming convention to talk about is going to be the Turbo series. The Turbo series is their high Candela oriented heads. So some folks like Candela, like a ton of it. Some folks like a lot more spill. There's pros and cons to it. I have a full video on that topic. You guys can check it out if you're interested in that. But these ones are definitely throw monsters, which you will see here in just a second. Basically, this full-size one here is going to be with the rechargeable batteries. I should note that both of these do come with rechargeable batteries, which is kind of a new thing for the folks at Surefire. But they also both work with CR123As. It will just give you a reduced output. But this one here is 700 lumens, but 100,000 Candela. No joke, legit, as you guys will see here in just a second when we do the beam comparisons. And then this one here is going to be 650 lumens with 95,000 Candela. So almost the same in terms of Candela, almost the same in terms of lumens. The big difference is going to be runtime. So our little compact guy here is going to give you about 45 minutes of runtime, and this one's going to give you over 2 hours of runtime with that 18650 battery. And before getting into how the lights have performed, what I think of them, all of those sorts of things, we're definitely going to do a beam comparison. We're going to use a couple different lights. We're going to use the Mini Scout here. This one I believe is 500 lumens, as well as being 7600 Candela. We're also going to use the mod light with the OKW head. Definitely something that a lot of folks are probably going to compare them to. Of course, mod light makes the rifle lights as well with the same head, which will give you the same output. And before we do all that comparison, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video. Before continuing on, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is American Hartford Gold. Anybody who's watched the channel knows that I am not a huge fan of fiat currency, and that is an understatement. There's a plethora of reasons why that might be. Constant inflation, banks failing, the government threatening to bring about a digital currency. And as firearms owners know, you cannot count on the government for your protection. Our friends at American Hartford Gold can help you diversify your portfolio from just fiat-based currency to physical gold and silver, so that way you diversify that risk across the board. American Hartford Gold has thousands of 5-star ratings and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Plus, they support content like this, which certainly is not the case with all companies, as many of you know. When you reach out to them now, they will give you up to $5,000 in free gold or silver. You can let them know that I sent you by texting code GEAR to the number here on your screen, or giving them a call at 866-856-2097. Again, that is 866-856-2097, or text GEAR to 65532. Now back to the video. Before we turn the lights on, I do want to mention that we have my camera set on manual to as close to what I see with my human eye as possible. Obviously, it's a little bit different with the human eye than in the camera, but right now, as you can see, we have some lume out. The moon is probably a little bit past half in terms of illumination that is providing, and basically we'll turn on the Mini Turbo, Scout Mini Turbo, and that is the output there that you see. Where that chair is, where the wood fence meets the iron fence, it's approximately 35 yards away. Those trees in the back are anywhere from 40 to 50 yards, depending on the actual tree. And you can see there we do have a nice tight hot spot that's sort of getting washed out on here on camera. In real life, it doesn't look like that, but it's just so bright. The camera has a hard time with it. But you can see there we do have some spill, but not a ton, and it is a very defined edge on that spill. And here we have the output from the full-size Scout Turbo. Kind of similar looking. The spill appears to be a little bit larger than with the Mini, and the hotspot maybe a touch tighter. Paired back to back, this is the Mini over here, and yeah, for sure the spill's a little bit bigger, as you guys can see right here with that full size. Not by much, but there is a little bit, but the hotspot actually looks pretty darn similar, if not the same, now that we get them compared back to back. And here we have the output from the mod light with the OKW head on there. Again, kind of a similar overall design, hard edge on that spill, but comparatively rather, there is the Mini Turbo here on your right, and here is the mod light with, again, the OKW head. And what you're looking at here is the output from the original Mini Scout. Totally different, as you guys can see. The hotspot is much wider, and then the spill is way more spill, and it's just the spill or the flood, depending on how you want to say it. It's also not as hard of an edge, just because there is way more spill. So that's how they look at this distance. Now let's step it out and go across the lake. Again, for the new folks, I'm about 10 yards back on my property. The lake edge to edge here is about 110 yards. And then 10 yards on my neighbor's property, there is a little fishing shack. And we'll start out again with the Turbo Mini. And that is the output that you see there. And what you'll see when we zoom in is much more similar to what I see with my human eye. That is very intense for something that is 130 yards away. But again, backing out there, you can see that we do have my rosemary bush here to the right on the water's edge, and it is not illuminating all of it like it would be if we actually went over there. And just looking in the trees there, I can tell you without question, if there was like a bird in the tree, I would easily, with my human eyes, be able to see it. Up next is the full-size Scout Turbo. I'm not sure that it looks all that much different, honestly, which makes sense given the specs, but again, zoomed in, that's how it looks. And again, zoomed out, pretty similar in terms of how much of illumination we're getting on the actual rosemary. Now, I'll move it over here to the trees so we can do a direct comparison. This is, again, the full-size Scout Turbo, and then that is the Scout Mini. Those trees over there, these are probably 150 yards from here. These are about 140, so pretty darn close. Those are, there you go. Those are a good comparison. Those are probably about 140 right there, both of those sets, so you guys can see how that hot spot looks. Again, in real life, it is a little bit clearer than what you guys are seeing there out at distance in the tree line. But again, we're working with the cameras. You got to do our best. And up next is going to be the model light, again with the OKW head for comparison. Zooming on in here, you will see, well, maybe it's not going to show up on camera, but in real life, that does look a little bit less bright than what I see here with the Surefire turbos. So let me just kind of turn the mod light off real quick and put on the Turbo Mini. I don't know if you guys can see a difference. Again, mod light, Turbo Mini. Regardless, that's pretty intense, again, given the distances involved. Now we'll break out the OG Turbo, the Surefire Mini, and show you what that looks like. And that is what that looks like, completely different in terms of the actual image you're seeing. But again, note that here on my property, the rosemary bush is fully illuminated, even oriented at the fishing shack. So much spillier for sure, but zoomed in, you lose a lot of detail that you get with the Turbo. And this is, again, the Turbo Mini, much brighter. And then the original Surefire Scout Mini. And again, Scout Mini over there in the trees, then Turbo in the trees. Very different beam patterns for sure. Now that you guys have seen the beam comparison, I think it's pretty obvious at this point. These things are Candela monsters. Absolutely very, very impressive in terms of throw. Now, just some details on the lights that we haven't talked about so far, of course, is that they are as made in America as possible. That's one thing that folks are drawn to for Surefire. I do believe, this is my guess, I do not know this for sure, that the emitters actually are not made in America. I don't think any flashlight emitters are made in America anymore. But other than that, everything should be made in America. And I know that's one thing a lot of folks do like about the Surefire brand. Additionally, with the Surefire brand, typically what you get is ruggedized performance, meaning they can stand up to recoil, being banged into walls, dropped, all of those sorts of things. And I can say that absolutely has been the case with these lights so far. I have many thousands of rounds with guns rather that had these mounted. We've had zero issues with flickering, anything like that. Of course, as you can see, just basically looking at the photos that we're rolling in, they're heavily used. They've been beat up, banged, all those sorts of things, and we have not had a single issue at all in terms of reliability with them. One thing that may look a little funny if you're kind of just looking at it there is going to be the tail cap. And I say that because the bodies are a little bit wider to accept those rechargeable batteries, but they still use the standard Surefire tail caps, which is huge. So one of the big reasons for that is, number one, just the actual interface. People like the tail caps, myself included, on the Surefire lights. It is high only. So there's nothing else. You get all of the Candela, all of the lumens, all at once, which I like. So basically a momentary press will give you, momentary I should say, or a light press will give you momentary, and if you click it, that will give you constant. And any other Surefire compatible tail cap accessories that you want to use, whether it may be tape switches, whatever the case may be, they will all work on there. So the same ones that work on the older Scouts will still work on here. Again, it just looks a little funny because it's a little bit narrow on there in the back. Additionally, one thing to note is that the heads themselves are wider, and that's just to give it the ability to have that reflector being deeper. So that deep reflector is what gives you that high Candela, and basically the lights are 4 pieces, or 5 I guess if you count the battery. But we have our head here, then of course we have our rechargeable battery, and then we have the O-ring seal on there, so you don't have to worry about, if you guys want to go scuba diving, Surefire makes some of the best lights for that. O-ring sealed, and the threads are lubricated from the factory as well. And then we have our body, and then we have our tail cap. So that really is all there is to it. With the configuration of the lights and putting the lights back together is the same thing, of course, just in reverse order. Another thing, speaking of reversibility, that we should mention is that the mounts on these, on the Pro Series Surefires, are reversible. So basically I have mine set up with the M-lock here to mount on the left side of the rifle because that is my support hand. The same would be true on this one. I have it so that way it would mount on the top of a 1913 mount, and then I'd be able to activate it with my left thumb. That said, you can flip these around and go the other way. So basically is just pull the screw out and then flip the mount, and then you can use it the other way on the other side of the firearm, depending on how you want to set it up. So that certainly is good. And full disclosure for folks out there, this one here was sent out by the folks at Brownells, so we appreciate them sending it out. They don't really care what I say about the light. They just want me to say Brownells, so we've already taken care of that. And the large full-size version here was sent out by the folks at Surefire. They don't get to see the video before anybody else. I don't have any input on what I say, but just full disclosure, they did send them out. Now, let's talk about price point, because whenever you have an American-made weapon light, that's definitely going to be something we need to consider compared to competitive offerings that are not made in America. So I believe the MSRP on these is over $300 street price. If you find a good deal on it, you can find them in the mid-250s. Now, of course, follow me on all my socials for those types of links, but that is expensive for a weapon light for sure, so it's definitely something you need to consider, I guess you could say. Again, there's a whole lot of people that only trust Surefire, which I totally get, totally understand. I've never had a Surefire give me any issues, and I've had every other brand pretty much that makes flashlights on the market give me issues at one point or another. So that's, sometimes it's buy once, cry once kind of thing. So if that's what you're into, Surefire definitely is something I would look at for that. Now let's talk about the Candela monsters. So a lot of people, again, I have a full video breaking this down with examples that you guys can see what I'm talking about here, but a lot of people are afraid with a high Candela light that they will blind themselves indoors with white walls in the middle of the night if their eyes aren't adjusted, those sorts of things. And that is something to consider. But one thing to also consider is that if you're trying to decide between like a high lumen and a floodier light versus a high Candela light with a little bit less lumens, is that you can always create flood with Candela through different techniques. You can't recreate Candela with a floody light through techniques, if that makes sense, right? So that's something to consider as well. But all in all, guys, they've been solid performers as the rain starts to come down, and I have no issues with them at all. Again, it just comes down to, do they provide what you want in a light? If they do, I would definitely check them out, and there will be a link in the video description for you guys to do so. And with that, we're going to close the video out because the storm appears to be here. So if you guys aren't following me on all my socials, I definitely recommend you do that. If you like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button. If you've done that and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, you can sign up for the email at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month, and it has all the videos since the previous month's email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. Additionally, if you guys like deals, if you guys want to see these on sale, any of the guns that we've used them on during the review, anything like that, optics, ammo, etc. If you guys want to see deals on those, sign up for the daily deals email. It goes out every day as the name indicates, and it has 6 to 8 of the best deals that we find around the internet on any given day. If it's in the email, it's the cheapest I know of for that product on that day. So hopefully it saves you guys some time, and hopefully saves you some money as well. And with that, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.